Yeah, I mean, you see this and you talk about this in other arenas or other industries to kind of like not just be centered on AI for a second. Like you talk about body shop automation
Hmm.
and how, a lot of that is automated and you've got robots, and soon self-replicate. Well, there are like self-replicating robots making crucial parts of different cars or whatever. But there's still humans that oversee and manage that process, right? And there is, one of those, delicate contradictions, in capitalism is that as it develops and as technology develops, the role of human labor changes, right? It's not as if it stays the same and gets replaced so much as it changes, it shifts, but it's still, and even more so, it becomes more central to the production of value as it does, right? Because surplus value can only be extracted from human labor. But so there's a kind of weird contradiction there where the less labor that's needed, the more invisible it like becomes. Do you know what I'm saying? And so like, I mean, you see this a lot, I think, in agriculture and manufacturing because those are like extreme like surplus value producing industries where a lot of that labor actually tends to slip out of view precisely as those industries grow more and more efficient, right? And so it also feeds this idea that like um the capitalist world is a product that doesn't require producers. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
I think you kind of, you put that in the book so well that, this is you see it in what they say and in how they articulate their dreams for the future, that capitalists pursue profit as if money can just and eventually will double itself and they can kind of step aside. And I think that, I mean, if we can bring it back to B2B SaaS, because I think that like the or like the explosion of like the rentier economy has only buttressed that fantasy, right? Because it has kind of through all of these different platforms created this, really, I mean, when you're reading this chapter in the book, it's almost like frightening, the scope. I mean, it's like I've always realized, I always know how terrible all these platforms are, but you really get a sense of like, oh, this sort of like layers to the like new rentier economy, and then also the subjectivity that it then produces. That's what freaks me out the most. You talk
Mm.
about, and Bryce, you're saying like the kind of how it enables everyone to kind of become these part-time or petty landlords in a way, and then the subjectivity that produces on a mass scale digitally is a bit breathtaking.
Mm. Yeah, and these things are related, right? Because it's like if the whole economy is based on everybody becoming a petty landlord, and landlords don't produce value, they capture value. They capture a share of other people's wages or other people's profits, right? Like, and so if your whole economy is based on a pyramid scheme of people capturing value from other people, then at what point do you create anything? At what point do you produce
Right.
any value? And that's where AI is meant to fill in that gap, right? Well, it's like, well, the AI is going to produce the value, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to be happening for all the reasons we've talked about. And so what you end up doing is you see the bottom fall out of the economy, right? Where no one's producing value, but everyone is trying to capture value from each other. And so the pie is getting smaller and smaller, and it's degrading, becoming, this deep fried value, right? It's value that's been captured and recaptured again and again and again. And so that, I think that leads to a lot of what we're seeing around, like, stagflation, around people, having to hustle, two or three or four different kind of side gigs going on, and you're piecing them together into one main gig, but that's because you're trying to capture value from here and over here and over here. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, like, the tech sector has envisioned and created the infrastructure for an economy based on parasitism, rentier capitalism, because that is the basis of what it means to be a venture capitalist, right? Like this idea of like value doubling and tripling itself,
Right.
that Mark Andreessen's talking about, it harkens back exactly to something that Marx talked about in Capital Volume 3, where he was talking about, and I described this in the book, when Marx was describing fictitious capital, right? This capital that continuously moves through the financial system, circulating with increasingly more velocity and value. And as Marx writes, its value appears to be doubled and tripled, quote, transformed into a mere phantom of the mind. And so the tech sector, venture capital, is based on this fictitious capital. This kind of, I think about it as like check kiting, right? You're writing a check today and cashing it, hoping that the funds are in the account at some future period. And because they have built a world for themselves based on not any real value with a grounding in the real economy, but rather the creation of value through speculative means, they think, well, that's how value is created. Value is created by doubling and tripling it in our minds, by selling other people the promise that the money will be in the account in a year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, right? But hey, I'm just gonna let me draw on it right now, and don't worry, it'll all be good. And so again, the bottom falls out. You have an economy where seemingly nobody is producing anything of real value. It's an economy with no real materialist basis. It's an economy that is just sandcastles in the sky. It's an economy based on these idealist vibes, wishes, wants, desires, promises, hype, and so on. And at some point, the check comes due, right? And I think we're living in that period right now where the check is coming due.
Jeffrey Epstein.